All right. So, as you can see by the title, me and Cloudy here are gonna talk about what is one of my favorite games of all time. Just came out, and I think it's definitely gonna be my game of the year. But Horizon Forbidden West. There's so many good things about this game, but we're gonna try to keep it to just over an hour for this discussion, and the spoilers will come later. And I'm going to put a timestamp just so that people that want to avoid the spoilers can easily do so. But yeah, it's some stuff it's kind of hard to not talk about, but we will definitely avoid doing so. But yeah. The first game is one of my favorites too, and I think this game just surpassed it in just about every way. I don't know, do you have any arguments against that?
By it surpassing the first one, absolutely not. This is 100% one of those sequels that takes the first game, the previous game, and just builds on it in every way possible that's good. Like Assassin's Creed 2 from 1.
That's what I was gonna say too, is it is very reminiscent of that. I also Uncharted 2. Maybe even more so than that, but yeah, definitely like Assassin's Creed 2 type, because that game was just so much better than the first and did so many cool things with the formula. I would say it's not quite Doom Eternal level where it destroys the first game and makes you never want to play the first game again. It makes it feel like just a slog in comparison, but yeah, no, it's definitely one of those sequels that just really does just about everything much better, except for maybe story. I'd say the stories are pretty comparable, except characters are way better in this game.
I like the story. I think the story in the second one is better, but I like the story in the first one personally better.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean,
we'll talk about why later.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but, I mean, we can just talk about it in basic ways that, like, they both have surprises, which I think is important to the enjoyment of both stories. Just because, or at least that's what, for me, because one of the things I was worried about with this game is just, like, because of the surprises in the first one were so cool, that I was like, how are they gonna come even close to that with the second game now that the cat's out of the bag, and basically we know why the apocalypse happened, we know how the world got to the way it is now, where it's kind of like, you know, sci-fi dinosaur robots mixed with kind of Native American like era culture and stuff like that. They did an awesome job explaining that, but this game also had some awesome surprises too, which I think went a long way in making it a really enjoyable story. But the one thing I think this game does way better is just the characters. I think are way more interesting, except for Aloy. She was great in the first game and in this one, and Silence. But yeah, I think even the side characters in this are a lot better, in my opinion.
Your team? I don't know how you want to classify it. The group of people around you. In the first game, you didn't really have a group of people. You just kind of bounced from place to place and dealt with certain areas and problems as you went. For the most part, this one has like people joining you to do your thing, and I really liked all those. Not quite, almost companions.
Yeah.
Where they were a little more focused, and you learned a little bit more about them, and their thoughts in the story and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed. We'll get into it later, but just talking to them.
Yeah, I also think even like side quest characters were better written, and
Most were, yeah.
yeah.
By far.
And also, like, I liked how the presentation got better too, because there was this kind of, stilted camera that the first game would have, and it didn't look bad or anything, but this one definitely changed things up and added some more camera angles that just, I think, really helped make the all the conversations a bit more interesting. And in general, like, I thought the conversations were better with more like dialogue options and all that crap. It was almost Mass Effect reminiscent, although maybe not quite as thorough as that game, because you can literally sit there talking to people for like 20 minutes a lot of the times, which I think to some people might be boring, but me, I always like hit every dialogue choice, so just want to know as much as I can, pretty much. But yeah, I think the other things we have to talk about before spoilers is like combat, like gameplay, puzzles, and the setting. And that's another thing I think is way better than the first one, is the setting. I absolutely love it. Like, it's one of my favorite open worlds ever. And the variety of environments is just fucking awesome. And I'm big on variety in general. But yeah, no, they really brought it here. But I don't know, what's your favorite biome or area in the game? I'm not sure if you even thought about that before. I had.
I honestly think it is the ocean, the coast, and then a little ways in to it as well.
Oh, I think I know what you mean. Like their redwoods,
rainforest.
Yeah,
that part too.
Yep.
Yeah, the like Amazon jungle like feel that slowly filters into like these tall redwoods, and then on the other side is the coast. And I thought that was awesome. I mean, the first time I actually saw the coast was in the snowy area, and then I saw a cauldron on the map, and I was just kind of heading towards that direction. And as I like crossed the valley, or went through a valley pass or something in like a snowy area, I just emerged on the other side, and it was just ocean, and I just thought that was so cool. And then just that whole area is fantastic. The way it all blends together somehow perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that they did really well, is the way they blended environments together. It's just super cool. And yeah, no, that's one of my favorite areas too. Like, I just love games with jungles in them. Obviously being a huge Crysis fan. And but yeah, no, I really loved the island. I think you know which one I'm talking about. And I don't think it's not really a spoiler because it's on the fucking cover of the game. You know what I mean? Yeah. But San Francisco, it's obvious it's San Francisco. I love that area just because it's tropical, but it's also got the city element, and it's just really cool. I also like that there's a lot of water out there, but yeah, it's just an amazing area. Also, the Thorn Marsh is really cool too, because it's kind of like a jungle swamp area, and yeah, it's just done really well because obviously the graphics of the game are among the best ever. Like, it looks so fucking good, especially on resolution mode, which myself and even Digital Foundry are pretty high on. Like, and usually they're like hardcore frame rate over anything, but this is like one of those rare cases where they were all in support of the 30 FPS mode, just because the level of detail is so insane, and it's kind of not there on the performance mode. But the performance mode, of course, is way smoother, so some people just don't want to switch back to 30. For me, it only took like, I don't know, 5 minutes to get used to. Just because it was a bit of a shock at first, but I got used to it quick, and then yeah, I was just enjoying the insane level of detail for the duration of the game. But
I actually I did half and half, honestly. When it came to more difficult fights, this probably doesn't make any sense, and I don't entirely understand it myself. But doing a lot of fighting with some of the more difficult type of enemies, like the Tide Ripper and Slaughter Spine and Snapmaws, that require you to be a little bit more on your game when you're fighting them. Certain enemies like that, I switched it back to performance mode just because it felt better.
Actually, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, but then just exploring and some of the easier monsters that, pose almost no challenge, I would keep it at resolution mode because it was so fucking pretty.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Just exploring and going through different environments and stuff like that it's an absolutely beautiful game. I'm usually all about performance mode because I like the smoother gameplay now, but when I'm not doing too much gameplay, I went to resolution mode on this one.
Yeah, because it's just eye candy, and it also, the good thing is that it's still super low lag controls even on 30. And good frame persistence, so it's a smooth 30. Like, there's no drops or anything like that. So if you're gonna deal with 30, it's one of the better ones to do it with. It's certainly not like Red Dead Redemption 2 or something, where it's got frame drops and the controls are just laggy as all hell. I mean, actually, that game, I think even at 60 is a lot laggier than this is at 30, which says a lot. But yeah, that's Rockstar for you. They tend to not have the most responsive controls. But yeah, no, I played all in 30, but yeah, I was thinking too that would make sense. Any like really tough fights, that 60 can help, especially with aim. Although it's like with this game, the controls are like responsive enough to where I never felt like I was being held back by 30. Which is great because it's like kind of reminds me of Ratchet, the remake on PS4, where it's just super responsive controls, and even though it's 30, although now it's 60 on PS5, but yeah, the other thing I think might be easy to skip over, and I'm glad I remembered, but is sound and music. I love the soundtrack of both games, the first one too, and this game I thought had an even better soundtrack. Really amazing, and the sound effects are incredible too, even without the 3D audio. But the 3D audio obviously helps quite a bit, just because the general environment sounds are just awesome. Like, you can't go through the jungle without hearing tons of bugs, animals, and just everything, and every snap of a twig. It's really impressive stuff. But I guess now we can talk about gameplay, which is really, for me at least, probably the only negatives I can come up with. Although the gameplay in general, I would say, is overwhelmingly positive, but my few nitpicks are gameplay nitpicks. But Like, I think the combat is better. Like, it definitely feels more like finely tuned and more balanced to me. And just, I like the new abilities that have been added. And I guess you could say it's a gameplay thing, but one of my favorite things about this game versus the first one is the fact that we don't have to sort through our fucking inventory anymore. That it just sends it to the stash, and then when you need more resources, you go to the stash and pick it up. I absolutely love that sort of thing. And I don't think I've seen a open world game do that sort of thing, or an RPG. I think maybe you could say Demon Souls remake, just because like if you have extra of those healing leaves, it sends them to your stash and then refills when you die and respawn. But that's like the close. I think Bloodborne did that too, but this does it with basically everything, and I just love that. Like, anything that makes the game convenient so that you can just keep playing, focusing on the world and stuff. I just love that. I think it really goes a long way to making this a better experience.
It depends on the RPG. Many of the ones I play, for example, there's almost unlimited inventory, but it doesn't hinder you when you need to do something with that inventory. I do like the seamlessness of it for sure. It helps the natural hoarder in me and my desire to just pick up everything with a name over it in case I might need it later.
Same. Also, it's like I tend to scavenge like everything that I see a lot of the time, so that's another reason why I love not having to worry about that stuff. Just because I feel like it kind of takes you out of the experience sometimes when you're having to sort through your inventory to make sure you have enough space. Even though that's realistic, I just think that sometimes what's realistic isn't always the most fun, especially if the game isn't focused around realism.
Mm-hmm.
Which this obviously isn't. Which I guess brings up one of my sore spots with the game, because it is kind of realism related, but the way that when you get hit by these giant robot dinosaurs, you get knocked down hard and for a long time. And like, I get that is obviously realistic. Like, if you're getting hit by a giant robot dinosaur, you'll be lucky to survive, much less get back up and keep fighting. But it's something that takes away control from the player, and especially in those arena fights where time is of the essence and you can't really afford to be defensive all the time, it's just rough. Like, I think you said the same thing, that you raged quit at a certain point in those arenas. I made it to the Tremor Tusk, one of the ones where they give you a preset loadout, and I tried it several times and eventually just gave up because I couldn't take it anymore, and I put it on easy difficulty and then just cruised through the rest like really easily. Which I hate to do. Like, I'm really stubborn about lowering difficulty to get past parts, but it was just necessary in this case. Like, but yeah, you had some of the same thoughts about the difficulty in the arena. Did you have as much of a problem with the whole getting knocked down thing? Because that was like my main issue with it.
It was horrible. Because there were some enemies, even if they may not hit hard, or you're just able to heal through or not take too much damage and not be at risk of dying, but you could get almost unlocked in some cases for a while.
Exactly.
Where you would get hit and then you would be stunned and stutter for 1 to 2 seconds, and then try to get away and then get stunned again by being knocked down for another 2 seconds. And that's rough when when fights are already kind of long, or can be if you're fighting some of the bigger enemies, and then just needlessly longer because you have to spend so long to recover. Yeah, I started noticing it more and more towards the end, and it started really frustrating me.
Yeah. Also, some of the status effects that they would do would be wicked fucking annoying too. Like, especially the Apex Slaughter Spine. I hate those dudes. Just because it's like their status effects are so bullshit and they just cover an entire area around you. So it's like almost impossible to even avoid getting hit by their plasma, and then the plasma builds up and you get exploded if you don't get to your cleanse potion in time. And like I think I mentioned before we started recording, but like, yeah, the whole quick item wheel thing that you have on screen, like, it can sometimes be a pain in the ass to cycle through just because they will re-add in stuff. I think it might have been a bug because I haven't been having problems with it lately, but like, it would, every single item it would add in, even if I change them, because they do let you customize it, and it would re-add them in there so that I would have to cycle through like 15 different items to find the thing I needed. And yeah, that just added to some of the frustration. But I don't want to be negative. That was just one of the only negative things I could say about this game. But like, because the combat in general, I fucking love it. Like, it kind of reminds me of Doom Eternal a little bit, just the way you break off pieces of different enemies. There's so much enemy variety, which is wicked fun in any game. And like, I mean, they pretty much like doubled the amount of machine types in this game compared to the first one.
There were quite a few, yeah.
Which is just awesome. Like, I love like the enemy variety, even if I am not a big fan of all the enemies. Although I think that comes with any game with a lot of enemies. There's always certain ones that you don't like. And that would definitely be true in this game. I'd say I hate the Tremor Tusk the most, just because the stupid salvo cannons on his ass, like, that they have very little telegraph, and when they shoot, you have to pretty much already be rolling out of the way to avoid it. Like, but yeah, no, it's just really fun seeing the robots break apart as you shoot them. There's different weaknesses for each one, kind of like Doom, and yeah, I just think it's really fun. It's kind of like a combat puzzle, and I love fighting the robots for the most part. My only issue is like I said, just getting knocked down constantly. And when you're fighting one-on-one, it's typically not an issue. It's usually when you have to fight a bunch of them at once that it's a problem, except for the Apex Slaughter Spine. That was the only one that I had trouble fighting one versus one, really.
Yeah. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the climbing in the end, even though it's significantly better than the first. It's just, it still feels almost as restrictive, just in a slightly more apparently open way. And it only became obvious a little later on in the game when you are trying to like climb a mountain or climb some area, and they want you to go a specific path. So even though it's not like Uncharted, like where it has yellow handholds, there's still yellow handholds because you use your focus to highlight your like climbing path and hand grip, pull, whatever, and it's still just basically wherever they want you to go, instead of being a little more open. Like, it felt more open at first, but it's still not. And that was a little annoying in some parts. Like, I can climb this cliff, but I can't climb this cliff right next to it, even though it looks exactly the same, because they want me to go up the first cliff to get to like this platform specifically, instead of the faster route up.
Yeah, that sort of stuff could be annoying. I would say, actually, my only real issue with the climbing was actually like and some of the tighter locations, like where there is like a preset path that you pretty much have to go up, and sometimes just the direction she would jump would just be way off, like from where I would be pointing the camera, like, and it pissed me off quite a few times where she would just like not grab onto something, and yeah, like I think that is something they really need to work on, just because I don't want them to get rid of climbing and platforming, but to me that was like probably the way the game seemed like the most dated. It's just because to me it felt worse than Uncharted 1 sometimes, the way she would just not jump in the right direction or just not grab things. Like sometimes it drove me nuts. As far as the open world, I actually had a bit less of a problem with, just because it seemed like a little more reliable, especially if there's a lot of handholds, in which a lot of times there was. But yeah, that's probably my only other major thing I think they need to improve.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was only in the open world. It wasn't that big of an issue. You didn't come across that sort of thing too often. It was just associated with quests. Like,
yep,
you need to go to this place, so you need to go up this very specific path. Even though everything looks exactly the same that you're climbing, you just can't go to this part of the cliff because no real reason. But you need to go to this part of the cliff. Yeah, that it sucked doing that during quests because they wanted to give you the more, I don't know, story-driven path, even though it wasn't the fastest. The open world generally wasn't a big deal. You barely noticed that sort of thing while you're just doing your thing out there.
Yeah, totally agreed. Like, I was actually pretty happy with a lot of the open world climbing just because it was such a huge improvement over the first, but it was more just like, yeah, the more crafted, like, side quest locations that I was having trouble with.
Yeah. And she's basically known for being like the greatest climber in the world, practically. I don't know why they wouldn't go a little bit more Breath of the Wild in your freedom to climb. I mean, especially when it came to climbing anything like old ruin. It just, that was almost the most noticeable part, where you could only climb certain parts of old man-made like metal structures based entirely on what they wanted you to climb.
Yeah, true that. Like
almost none of it was climbable except for like this one little path that you had to go do this and that. Very frustrating.
And it's funny because I actually had a blast like in the first section of the game where you had those towers that you could climb. You know what I mean? And you get those lenses. That was like really fun. But yeah, it was some of the other locations that, yeah, it could be a little bit frustrating. But yeah, no, I definitely love like the combat though, like and some of the puzzles were pretty cool too, like not super complicated, which I think some people like. Like I thought everyone loved puzzle games, but apparently not everyone does. But yeah, no, I thought they were like not super complicated, but good. Like not like Zelda level, but still pretty great, I thought. But I think there was something I wanted to say about the combat, but I forgot. Oh yeah, weapons and like abilities were something that was really fun. Although some of the weapons I just didn't use that much.
Nope.
But there were some abilities that I abused the shit out of. Like braced shot, which it's so powerful. I still think it's the most powerful thing she has. As far as a single shot, and it's the one where she gets down on a knee and shoots this basically rocket arrow that does like 1,000 damage depending on your equipment. Actually, speaking of abilities and weapons, that was another thing that I didn't love, is the upgrading requirements, especially for the later higher grade weapons. It got to be a bit ridiculous. I don't know if you upgraded any of the legendary stuff, but yeah, it's pretty rough.
All the way now.
I did for my outfit, and then everything else I was kind of trying to, and then gave up. So much work.
The outfit 1 level, and I still had to go out and fight an extra Slitherfang or 2 to get everything that I needed.
Oh yeah, and it's
one
like,
outfit, 1 bow.
Even if you have like parts built up, you still might have to do some hunting.
Because it requires generally the big robots, and those don't become available until you start to fight them in the story.
Yeah.
Because there are certain like the Slitherfang. I think it was after a certain story point, kind of midway through the game, is when like you fight one and then it unlocks the random ones out in the world. Like I explored everything as I went for most of the map, and there was a Slitherfang site that didn't show up on the map until I had done a certain story point. So
yeah,
because of that, you don't really fight the big enemies until you get to like a certain point of the story, which slowed down the ability to upgrade them because you didn't fight them as often.
Yeah, for sure. Like, because I had that same issue where I was trying to find Tide Rippers and Slitherfangs out in the wild, and I even looked up the map online, and yeah, like you said, like until you reach a certain story point, you can't actually find them in the wild. So if you don't have enough parts, you're basically screwed.
And you don't fight a lot of enemies. Even if you just went with the story, you really don't fight a lot of enemies. Like, I'm surprised how few slaughter spines and tremor tusks you fight as part of the story.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I can't remember if it was like a story quest or like maybe side quest where you fight the slaughter spine.
You fight one as part of the story, but just one.
Huh. Yeah. I did like how they brought back from the Frozen Wilds the whole I forget what they called it.
Apex?
Yeah. Well, they called it that in this game. They called it something else. Oh, Daemonic. Like DAE.
Oh.
Daemonic. That's what it was called in the first one. Well, in the Frozen Wilds, I mean. And I loved how they brought that back, just because it made it so that some of the enemies would level up to, you know, your power or experience level.
I should dismount.
Which was pretty cool, but yeah, in general, even with the restorations, I just loved the combat, especially using all your different abilities and different ways of fighting them. Yeah, it's really fun to fight them, and a lot of the times I would fight certain ones just because I was walking past them and I saw them. It's just like fun to do that sometimes. Especially like later in the game when you have like overpowered stuff, it's fun to just like punk the shit out of them. But all right, like what else can we talk about other than spoilers?
that might be it.
Yeah, I guess we can go on to spoilers, which actually we're like 35 minutes in anyway, so I guess it makes sense, probably about halfway. But yeah, I did not expect. Wait, should we go straight into story spoilers? Yeah, I think so.
Might as well.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be most of the spoilers anyways, but I did not expect where they were going with this story, but I loved it, because I did remember the Far Zenith group from the first game, of course, because I played it like a month before this came out, and I thought it was real interesting the way they took it with just them basically being rich megalomaniacs that, you know, used their time and know-how to develop some insane technologies and like medicine to make it so that they would live for a ridiculously long period of time and come back to Earth, although not for the reason we first thought. But I guess maybe we should try to go a little chronologically, but that's like really the base of the story, like, because at the end of the first one, or at the beginning of this game, she's kind of just trying to clean up things as far as you know, Hades and stuff, and all the Pharaoh plague robots that he reawoke, and then shit goes south real quick, partly because of Silence being Silence. Which, yeah, he is still one of my favorite characters, even though he keeps doing some kind of shithead things. But yeah, did you expect the Far Zenith thing at all?
No. I mean, after the fact, of course, it makes perfect sense. It was a little weird how they were at a Far Zenith facility in the very, very beginning of the game. It almost came out of nowhere. I completely forgot. I mean, I had just played the first one not too long ago to catch up, and they were briefly mentioned as, you know, the other hope for humanity 1,000 years ago, but failing because, you know, supposedly exploded. They did not.
Yep. They pulled a fast one. They made it look like they exploded.
But all that shit was why it was a good story, but why I fuck, dust in my throat from all the moving. That's kind of why I don't like this one as much as the first one, because it just got too complicated for me. Like, as ridiculous as that sounds, it made more sense to be the end of the world, come back through weird technological means because embryos were frozen and set to be unleashed in like a tribal state, and how humanity kind of came back into being after the end of the world. That was cool. The robot dinosaurs was weird at first in trailers, but the explanation behind that was cool and made perfect sense to me.
Oh yeah.
Them being how you terraformed the planet.
Yeah, and then also some of them being basically combat robots that Hephaestus created because of that infamous signal, which we learned the reason for from the Far Zenith people. Which, although, fuck, I might be messing up my details, but at the end, did we find out that it wasn't actually them that sent that rogue signal? We don't have to get into Nemesis yet, but I'm just trying to remember if it was them for real or if it was actually, I can't, yeah. Nemesis.
It was a Nemesis.
Okay, alright. But yeah, like that was also one of my other favorite things, is the way they explained the whole apocalypse itself, like how the world got destroyed, I thought was super interesting. Just because we know drones are a thing, artificial intelligence is a thing that's in our near future. And the crazy idea... oh, that was another thing I loved, is how, like, one of the missions, they showed you where they developed the Pharaoh robot's ability to consume biomass for fuel. Like, they showed you where they created that whole technology, which is one of the, like, key parts of why the apocalypse happened and how, like, kind of scary it is. Like... how that
yeah, it was I think it was Alba's mission.
It was, yep, when you first meet her and stuff, and when you first fight a Dreadwing, which yeah, thanks to PowerPix for spoiling that machine for me, but that was another very cool one of the many cool machines in the game. Just awesome variety in this game. But,
braving the wilds as always, Aloy?
yeah, like, I thought that all the characters were improved too. Like, even ones from the first game. Like, I would have liked to see more of Erend, just because he's hilarious. And I also kind of wish he was less of just the comic relief, because that's kind of what it seemed like they were making him into, instead of him actually being an important character. And you know, the great warrior that is. But Varl, I thought, was awesome. I really liked Zoe, and like, actually, that's another thing. One of my probably my favorite little city or location in the game is Plainsong, her home city. I just love the way it looks. Like, it's got all the vines, and it's almost kind of like a basket weave on top of these satellite dishes. It's so cool looking, I think.
Singing was actually really cool once you discovered how integral it was to their culture, and then a little later on, after you help Zoe and her personal mission to fix the land gods.
Yeah.
And how they all wake up around Plainsong, and then when you're back in the city, it's just they periodically start singing out in the distance.
Oh, yeah. I also even like how they have that kind of triangular grid of, like, crops around the city, too. Like, I always thought that looked really cool. In general, I love the, just the art style and design, like, of the game. And also, it's really dense, like, a lot more dense of a world than the first one, and it's bigger, which is really impressive. And actually,
the variety of biomes is great. I know we talked about it earlier, but from like canyon to forest to desert to
grasslands,
different kind of desert, yeah, grasslands,
snowy mountains,
north. Yeah, it's just and then straight up like Sahara desert, like nothing but sand.
And a very cool city in the desert. Although I kind of already accidentally spoiled that, because I wanted to go to the desert because that was one of the biomes we were talking about. And yeah, I just remembered. Oh yeah, I maybe shouldn't spoil that fucking Las Vegas is in the game. But yeah, no, that I thought that was really fucking cool too. Although it is kind of expected, just given the area of the country that I think they've made it kind of obvious where it is. And also, I was thinking that the Daunt, the area you start in, that's gotta be the Grand Canyon, right?
Something like that.
I would think so. I mean, I don't know if it's in the correct area geographically, but yeah. And also, did you find the Hoover Dam?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
I mean, I may have and then not realized what I was looking at.
Yeah, it's pretty much straight to the east of Vegas. and it's like after you get out of the daunt, like you're in that big area, where Plainsong is in this section of the map and stuff. But if you go way to the south, as far south as you can get in that area, that's where the Hoover Dam is. And there's nothing really out there, so there's not much of a reason to go down there. But I did, and yeah, I'm basically positive that's got to be the Hoover Dam, which is pretty cool. But
I will check that in a minute. I'm curious now.
yeah. But the other thing I noticed about the game is this game seems like it's one they put a ton of effort and lots of play testing. Just because there's so many like little things. Like even with dialogue, that was one thing I thought was wicked cool. Like if you went to an area that was involved with a quest before you actually got the quest, she would say, yeah, I've been there before. And stuff like that, which I think that's the level of effort in the game I just thought was really impressive. And you can tell there's almost no stone unturned in this game. Also just with like hints to the puzzles, I think some people thought there were like too many hints and puzzles, which I could kind of agree. But like as far as her being verbose, like while she's just doing gameplay, like running around, I love that sort of thing. Like that was one thing I was disappointed in, like because the first trailer of the first game, she talked a lot, and then the actual game came out and she talked a lot less. I think because probably a lot of people were like, "Oh, she talks too much," but I'm a fan of that. Like I like when she's talking or making her little comments about what's going on, just because.
Gonna send this to my stash. Gonna send this to my stash.
That's a little.
Gonna send this to my stash.
She said that a little too much, but maybe not for me. I guess I don't know. Like.
I found it hilarious. I didn't mind it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I enjoyed it. Even the ones that she repeated a little too much. I think one other gameplay thing we forgot to talk about. The shield wing. Pretty cool. I think Zelda made it so that you pretty much can't make an open world game without some kind of glider.
It's just such a convenient, easy way of getting around fast without, like, being in a jet.
Yeah, and I think
Kinda
everyone...
deal.
I think everyone kind of hates fall damage, you know what I mean? Like, and that
It's a
just
little
helps
annoying.
it. Although that was one other issue. Like, there were many times where the shield wing would not deploy.
Yep.
And I just fell to my death. So that was a little problem, but who knows? Like, it seems like they have fixed some things. Like I said with the quick item wheel, and that seemed like another that I hope they fixed. They could have. It's like, it's one of those things where you play games when they've come out right away, and sometimes, you have to pay for it a little bit. The price of being an early adopter, I guess. Oh yeah, photo mode. I use that in this game probably more than any other game I've played.
I think a couple of photos, not too many.
Yeah, I think you're not like really a big screenshot person. Right?
No, not particularly. I could still tell you how many I took, though.
Oh, sure. How many?
Album. Horizon. How to find one that's not trophy related.
Yeah, I think that's the only problem is...
4.
Oh.
Which is 4 more than I would usually take in a game. So that's something.
Oh, yeah. Including the trophy screenshots, I took 468.
Couple more than me, yeah.
Although I think that's not even like the most. I think there was some other game I took like 1,000. but not with photo mode. I think with just general screenshots somehow. I don't even know. Multiple playthroughs or something. I'm not sure. Might have been The Last Guardian or Uncharted 4 or something, but yeah, I guess back to the story stuff. Now, what did you think about Beta? Like, I was like pretty shocked to see another Sobek walking around.
I was kind of at first, but at the same time, if far as Zenith basically stole everything from the Zero Dawn project, then it makes sense. And I always wondered, like, why there weren't more doubles of important people out there, if possible. Like, I half expect
That is true.
there to be some kind of Ted Faro DNA somewhere, and he could possibly come back down the line or something like that. I don't know. It feels like a weird plot point that could happen in the future.
I was thinking maybe he's such a psycho that he would never want there to be another he has to be the only one or something, which is why he tried to like make himself live forever like the Zeniths did, although yeah, he failed pretty miserably. That was one thing I was a little disappointed. I kind of wanted to see what he looked like because he sounded like just some monster. You know, they don't show him. I wish they did. Just because fuck that guy, he's such a prick. And he only got worse, so that is one thing. I was glad that they showed more of him. They made him look even worse. Like, he was pretty much of a scumbag in the first game, with especially what he did to the alphas, I think they were called. And then he just got way worse in this game. Just complete psycho, megalomaniac. Yeah, no, yeah, he's just the worst, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was kind of funny the way they did him. They definitely made it so he did not have a happy ending at all, which is, yeah, he deserves nothing less than to be turned into some kind of amorphous blob or mutated freak suffering for almost 1,000 years or whatever. I think that's pretty much what happened to him until he was put out of his misery years later by Aloy, I think. But it was cool also just to see his little what would you call it? It was almost like a temple to himself, like an actual Egyptian pharaoh style. Yeah, the bunker that you go to. Forget exactly what it was called. I can't. Thebes, yeah, that's right. Oh, on the map it's only called the dig site, but yeah, it was called Thebes, which is probably some historical reference.
Thebes was an ancient Greek city.
Thought so, yeah.
Or not a Greek, Egyptian city.
Oh. Because Thebes almost even sounds like a Greek word, you know what I mean? But, what else? Yeah, I was pretty sad when, I mean, we are talking about spoilers, but Varl,
Yep.
when he died. Because he was, kind of one of the earliest characters with her from the beginning. And he was, like, one of the few that, like, respected her enough to, like, when she said, stop acting like I'm, like, some sort of god or savior. And, like, I think that's why, like, they bonded. Even though maybe his motivation to, like, constantly try to have her back might have been that at first, but eventually he just, became her friend like everyone else, which I think she really needed, because that's why she was like such a loner, because she was sick of being like looked up on at a pedestal. And also, I mean, she probably just felt alone in general. But
he also wanted to hit that in the beginning.
did he?
Oh, in Horizon Zero Dawn, absolutely.
I remember Erend hitting on her, but I don't remember.
Oh, he was totally like in awe, but definitely it felt like he wanted Aloy because she was different and fucking badass and
Hot as fuck.
yeah. Not too many redheads around.
Oh yeah. I mean, even ignoring my thing for redheads, like, yeah, no, she's just wicked pretty. I don't know if you've seen her, the actual actress she's modeled after. But
Ashley Birch is too, yeah.
Well, she's not modeled after Ashley Birch, but Ashley Birch is cute as fuck too. No, it's some like Danish actor, or is that what you would call someone from the Netherlands? Dutch, it's Dutch, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, she's wicked pretty too. But what pissed me off about like the early trailers, there was some people saying, "Oh, they made her like uglier," and I was like, "Are you out of your mind?" To me, immediately, I thought she looked way better, way more like a real person. Like, just because the detail is more there. Well, in the first game, it looked amazing, but also a little plasticky. You know what I mean? Like, now she has like actual pores and peach fuzz, and it's like some people are fucking weird with their little bandwagon fucking. Oh, it's woke, blah blah blah. Shut up, people. It's like, calm down. It's like starting to sound like the boy who cried wolf. But yeah, I also liked how they brought Gaia back in, because Gaia is such a cool character. And
everything about basically there are basically two parts to the game for me. It was pre-Gaia in the base and then post-Gaia in the base.
Yep.
Like the way the game changed so significantly once you Gaia got to the base and then established it as your base. It was crazy how much the game like shifted in so many ways. Because even when you're in like the Daunt and parts of Plainsong, you haven't quite gotten to Tenakth territory yet, because it was on the other side of the mountain that you couldn't really cross.
Yeah.
It was basically like I don't want to say one note, but a lot more linear in its approach, in that you're looking for Gaia to help fix the failing ecosystem. And then once you finally accomplish that goal, the area just opens up incredibly, like, oh, you can go get Demeter in
Poseidon and
Poseidon was the desert, Las Vegas.
Ether was the Tenakth one,
northern.
Right?
I think it was.
I'm pretty sure Ether was the one that you got at the Tenakth like home city, or where.
Yeah. That required you to go north and meet Kotalo.
That's or Kotalo was the guy in the north. What was the name of the leader of the Tenakth? Hekarro. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and then Ether was going out west to like just and dealing with the Quen.
Oh.
Or first dealing with the Quen.
I might be mixing up which one is which. I thought actually Demeter was the seed one, which is where you meet Alva.
Quen. Yeah, that's the Quen, because the place was called the Greenhouse.
Yeah. Also another cool city, that Scalding Spear. The big solar array. Yeah, no, there's so many cool like locations and things in the game. And yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say is like I really liked the Tanakh. I thought they were badass, and like I liked how they kind of worshipped like fighter pilots and stuff. Like I thought that was really cool. And one thing I kind of wish is that like you get a certain ability, which is I'd say the biggest gameplay spoiler in the game by far, and it's something that I had hoped for since I first saw the first game, and I'm so glad they added it. But the ability to fly on a sunwing. I do kind of wish that they did it a little bit earlier in the story, though, to be honest. Just because it is such a good ability for doing side content, just because it's so much easier to get around with it. Like, and also it's just such a beautiful view flying over this world. I am like the biggest fan of this. Like, also just because the fact that you literally just hit a button and he picks you up off the ground, sometimes even midair, like. Yeah.
Or out of water.
Yeah, that's another huge thing. Yeah, because it's like sometimes getting out of the water is a pain in the ass, and it's like he just swoops down. It's like, oh, it's so fucking cool. So cool, man. Like, yeah, that was one of those things I was so like thrilled about, but obviously I couldn't spoil it for people. But I was like just trying to tell people, make sure you keep playing. Like, and you might even want to skip ahead to the second to last mission because it is worth it 100%. So I do kind of wish they had put it a little earlier just so that you don't have to play through most of the story before doing all the side content, because it got to the point where at the end where I had tons and tons of side content to do before the end, although it was just so much more enjoyable doing it because I had the Sunwing. But yeah, no, I do wish they let me save some more story missions for the end, but yeah, no, it's just worth it in the end. I love the Sunwing. It's like maybe my favorite thing about the game, other than just the big stuff like story and combat.
It didn't come as quite a big shock to me because once you start doing a lot of side content, you get 2 missions in the northern part of in the snowy area, where basically says, I can't go up and do this. I need to find a way to fly. And it just becomes like,
why would they say that?
Yeah. And it became one of those, like,
fucking
to be, one of those quests that gets read out.
Oh my god.
For you to do later or something like that. Yeah. So at that point, it was like, it was just so obvious that it was coming that it kind of lost its shine when it finally did hit rather, which was a bummer because that I could see where if you had no idea it was coming, it would have been so cool. Like, oh, Beta gave me, we're here and we're doing that, and she came out of her shell and she's hacking Hephaestus, and she gives me this like Sunwing. And then blueprint, and then you go and you're like, I need to hack a Sunwing and fly. Like, that would have been awesome, but
yeah,
I knew it was coming before.
I can't believe they weren't more careful, because they did hide the trophy, because there is a trophy. And it's like, yeah, no, and I heard they even hinted at it in trailers, like which I kind of tried to forget. Because someone wrote a comment about, they hinted that they might, like, I was like, why would you write that, you bastard? Like, because it wasn't even on the actual trailer, it was on something completely different. And yeah, I was like, why would you write? So I just tried to forget about that, and it still was a bit of a surprise, and I was just so happy that it actually was the case, because yeah, like I said, it's like one of my favorite things in open world games is to be able to fly, especially in this one. But also they made it, it's not just flying, but it's like basically the most convenient flying, other than if you were like actually Superman. Like it's comparable to Spider-Man, really, just because it's so quick to just get picked up by it and just go wherever you want. I love it so much. Also, being able to fly, that's one thing I always want to do in games, is being able to fly to the highest point of things. And yeah, you could totally do it with the Sunwing, even in San Francisco, where there's not always ways to climb to the top of things, especially like that pointy building over there. And actually, I'll send you a couple pictures I took. But yeah, no, I love the Sunwing. It's like my favorite thing.
I love that instead of it being a land-based game, they expanded it to both sea and air.
Oh, absolutely.
There aren't too many underwater sections and things that you do, but when you do them, I find them pretty cool, because it's not about fighting. It's like I mean, some of it is a little annoying, but it just becomes 100% about stealth. And you can't fight anything, so you gotta, do your best to avoid and hide, do what you gotta do, and then just the environments are so fucking beautiful underwater. Like glowing caves, or even certain cauldrons later in the game, like the ocean cauldron, where it's like infused with the ocean, and it's just this amazing juxtaposition of machinery and oceanic nature. I thought it was really, really cool. And of course the ocean, where it's just vast and beautiful and basically tropical.
Yeah, and like really good wave simulation too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the best I've ever seen, but the water looks awesome. Especially on the white sandy beaches, how it changes color. It looks so cool. Because that was actually something that was not the greatest in the first game. It's just
a hilarious picture.
Yeah. It wasn't super easy getting to that point, but I did it.
No, I can't imagine it would be.
But yeah, no, it's just one of the many awesome things you can do now that you got the sun. I also got other hints just by seeing certain objects that I knew there's no way to get to them unless you can fly. But I still, I tried to kind of bury my head in sand, and so I would still be surprised when I got it. But yeah, no, I just love it. I am so glad that they put in the work to make it happen. Just because I've always felt like it's a crime when certain games don't let you fly in their open world. Although it makes sense in Red Dead Redemption, although you actually sort of got to fly a little bit when you did that hot air balloon mission, which was pretty cool. But yeah, just a beautiful game, beautiful story. I guess now, I don't know, do you want to talk about the ending and stuff? Or any particular missions? Because I thought all the main missions really were awesome, with really cool set pieces and moments, and of course cutscenes.
I don't disagree, especially like I was saying earlier, the two halves to the game. The second half just really exploded in lore and story and cool factor and set pieces. The beginning was pretty cool, but it just got better and better. And it's even when you're in the Hades, was it the Hades Proving Lab?
Yeah, I think actually that
where you meet
for me was the turning
Zenith
point
for the first time.
Exactly, yeah. So even before you get the mountain base, for me, that I think, because that was when you first learned, for real, that it's the Zeniths who are the enemies, and so I think maybe that was a little earlier than the mountain base. But yeah, for me, that I think was the turning point of the game. But yeah, no, that was awesome. Also, just more Silence. He's such a cool character, awesome actor.
There was a lot less of him, actually. I almost forgot about him more than once, because you really don't hear from him. I mean, you hear about him you hear about him every once in a while, but it's like it's the very beginning with Hades, and then after that he just kind of goes dark for a while, and then he pops up a little later on because he hacked your focus, and then he just disappears for a while. And she makes a few mentions of him here and there when it comes to something going on with the story or Regala or something like that, but he basically disappears until towards the end of the game, where he admonishes you for ruining his plans.
As always.
And another thing, despite, I mean, it makes sense not to show off the zeniths in any trailers or anything leading up to the game. It was just kind of shitty the way Regala became like a throwaway villain. Like, she was built up as the main threat, and obviously there was going to be something bigger down the line, but she just became relegated to, like, not important at all.
Yeah, and they even made a Regala collector's edition, you know?
Yeah, and I understand why they wouldn't be like Zenith Alpha Spectre or something like that, or even a regular Spectre. Even though it would have been a fucking cool ass statue, but.
Oh yeah. I guess it does make sense because they didn't want to spoil.
Yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense.
Also, the nods to like Lord of the Rings, kind of with that. That version of the Tremor Tusk.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But yeah, that is.
But you only fought like two of them. You only fought like one of them actually, where it has people
people on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. Which I'm kind of glad, because the Tremor Tusks are already a pain in the ass, even on their own. But yeah, now. Oh yeah, the other interesting thing is Tilda. Like, I thought she was a really cool character, and I also thought it was like really interesting how like she was basically in love with Elizabeth Sobek, which is a big reason why she was like kind of friendly to Beta and decided to help Aloy, although her motives were a little weird and unrealistic in the end. But it was like a good way to explain why she would betray them, other than simply, you know, disliking them because they're all assholes. I mean, the Far Zenith, obviously. But yeah, I thought that like they did a good job explaining most things. And the Nemesis thing, I think there's a lot left there for them to explain, which I assume we will see in the next game. Although, who knows, maybe they'll pull another 180 on us where we think it's about Silence reviving, you know, one of the Horus platforms, and us having to fight that somehow. And then it really turns out to be the Far Zenith, so who knows, maybe Nemesis will also turn out to be not the real enemy or something.
And they very conveniently made it so that the latter half of the game involves finding the three subordinate functions to make Gaia more powerful than Hephaestus, so she could absorb Hephaestus to make machines to fight the Zeniths. That plan obviously blows up in everyone's faces, but they capture Hephaestus anyway. Yada yada yada. Story. He gets out to be able to make the fight against the Zeniths easier. So there's a nice convenient way for you to always have machines to fight, even though now Gaia can also make machines through the Zenith Fabricator to be able to right the planet, because that became the other main factor, like that was a little weird.
I was thinking the same thing. How it was
Like
good that they
convenient of a bow.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking too that it was good that they explained why the robots in the environment would still be hostile.
It'd be hard to stay dry in this.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it obviously makes sense why they would, it's set up for another game. And I don't have a problem with that. It just, well, it was also a little silly at the same time.
Yeah, I am curious what it's going to be like fighting these Nemesis things. But who knows? Who knows what'll happen? I just hope, I know John Gonzalez, the writer of the first game, and I know he laid out the story for this game, but he left Guerrilla. I just hope he already has the third part laid out, just because I think he's an awesome writer, which is why this, even though, despite my doubts, this game's story turned out to be comparable, if not better than the first one. Despite, the obvious surprises being gone, he provided some other surprises, and this told a really cool story. Although the rest of the writers are great too, I am sure. It's just, I think that it was his vision originally to, because they just started with robot dinosaurs and early humans, and he added all the thing about the terraforming and the Pharaoh plague after the fact, which is just super impressive to come up with a story after the fact when you already have a premise. It's just awesome. But
We don't need to make it too, the amount of they made it so complicated towards the end, almost unnecessarily so, in my opinion. It's not necessarily bad, but it almost gets to be a little too much. I mean, as ridiculous and outlandish as it was, the first one just had a certain simplicity to it that just gets completely blown out of the water of, oh, it's the Far Zeniths, oh, it's the same ones who, technically blew up but didn't blow up 1,000 years ago. Oh yeah, they live forever. Oh yeah, they ran away from a natural disaster. Oh yeah, that natural disaster is their collective consciousness that didn't make it.
yeah, some kind of AI consciousness that they created, but then took over and started fabricating better things than they could, and also took over all their base pretty much in there. And then also that it wasn't them that were trying to destroy Earth to rewrite it. It was actually their creation that did it.
Yeah, it got a little too complicated at the end, and it's not necessarily a awful thing, but it almost became too complicated, where they didn't have to even go that route. With Hephaestus getting out there, that was enough to, and they basically gave him an out to never be able to be caught again, so that there will always be, dangerous dinosaurs to fight, essentially. And by introducing the Quen, they created this idea that there are, in fact, tribes across the sea that we have no idea about. The Forbidden West and the Tanakh were one thing, but, technically the Karjan knew who they were, so I'm sure most of North America is basically covered. And I don't know, they could always go South America, and who knows what kind of civilizations are there. They introduced the Quen, which were significantly more technologically advanced than all of the North American tribes that we run across the game. So that makes you wonder what else is out there. Who else is out there?
Except for maybe the Sons of Prometheus. They had some pretty good technology, although a lot of it was due to Silence, right?
Yeah, they were in Oseram that were helped out by Silence, so they got some extra help. But you have people like Silence. They say he's Banuk, but I don't know. They kind of left that very open-ended in the Frozen Wilds, like he maybe was Banuk and he has Banuk markings and body modifications, but something about him just doesn't add up with being Banuk, and no one can vouch for the fact that he was, or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
no, like he might have lived with them for a long time, but he probably isn't from there, or he isn't one of them.
all of South America, the Quen are seemingly Asian in like modern day Asia.
Maybe from like
where they
Hawaii
originate
or
from.
something, or yeah.
Hawaii doesn't even make that much sense because it seems like a very vast empire. I got the impression that was like where China is today, maybe Japan, but I was thinking more China because they say like there's a vast, large empire. So I assume they cover a lot of land, maybe a lot of different tribes.
It was also interesting how they had that one guy, that asshole that was kind of reminiscent of Pharaoh, and he obviously like worshipped Pharaoh, and I forget what they called him, but
CO.
well, I mean, like didn't they have like a name for Pharaoh that they would call him? Like, I don't know, yeah, not that important, but I'm not super sold. Sorry, what?
I actually thought that he was like the equivalent of Aloy to Elizabeth Sobek with Pharaoh.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, even though he looks a bit different. But he was very similar to that. Maybe it's just because he grew up, idolizing the guy or something. But
I don't think we ever saw Ted Pharaoh either. We just saw like a holographic projection of him, and they were pretty brief.
In that giant statue.
Yeah. Whereas Elizabeth Sobek, we got more like in color, like projections of her, and like we saw what she looked like very, very closely. Whereas with Ted Pharaoh, it was always the like Cortana AI type of hologram, where it was just like one monotone color versus any kind of like in-depth picture of him kind of deal. So I thought CO was like Ted Pharaoh reincarnated or something somehow, like Elizabeth Sobek or Ayla was.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, like I think we'll wrap it up. I'm not as sold on, I think, well, like you, I'm not completely sold on the whole Nemesis thing, but I also have faith that they will deliver something special, especially because I doubted them with this game, and they totally delivered, in my opinion. And I mean, honestly, I think this game is in my top 5 game of all time. Like, I love this game, and I think it's pretty easily gonna be my game of the year. I can't think of anything that will come even close. But yeah, and any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, not really. I mean, I can echo that it is easily my game of the year so far. Far better than Elden Ring. Far better than anything else that's come. I don't really know what else is coming later in the year.
Watch out, you might trigger some Souls fanboys.
So
that's true.
So we'll see if that actually comes out this year. That might be the only thing that could compete with it.
I'll be pretty surprised if it's better, to be honest, just because I even thought Zero Dawn was better than God of War, which I'm not sure a lot of people would agree with, but I did. I just loved the story that much, and just the world and everything, like, but we'll see.
Zero Dawn also, like I've discussed a couple times, kind of came out at a really
Bad
weird
time.
and inopportune time for me, just because it was like a week before the Switch came out, and specifically Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And then I think late March or early April, I don't remember, was when Nier Automata came out. So that
Yeah.
and Breath of the Wild
Which are both
dominated.
very long games in semi-open world, which is, that's like the worst combination pretty much. Kind of like Dying Light coming out 2 weeks before Horizon, but
Yeah.
I guess that's it. Fucking amazing game, and we'll look forward to the next one in the next 5 years, I suppose.
Probably.
All right, cool. That's it for us. If you haven't played the game, go play it, and hopefully you haven't listened this far because we just spoiled the shit out of it. But all right, peace.